We do know when you look at scans which are taken late on that there is abnormality. But the problem is you can't do a CAT scan, an ME scan, an MRI scan, a PET scan on the day. So everything is always done later. But there is an interesting paper that has come out fairly recently. And this was looking at an MRI scan. And what an MRI scan is, it's not an anatomical scan. It's actually a water scan, because what happens is the magnet moves around and all the water molecules in the tissue point towards where the magnet is. Then you switch the magnet off, that's the clinking you hear. All the molecules fall back and it gives you a gradient map as the electricity or the electric charge comes up. And what we showed, or it wasn't my paper, what they showed was that even at 3 weeks, the small number of people still had changes in the white matter. Although there were some changes and some recovery quite early on, at 3 weeks there was still some changes, and that's a worry, because it means there's no absolute save time. So I'm suggesting that the measurements that we take are always going to be an approximation. Very complicated slide, and please don't read it all, but what it does, it shows the journey that we've had in rugby union from the time when I was a young doctor in the early 70s, when we first started the 3-week rule. If you had a concussion, you couldn't go on for 3 weeks, you couldn't play for 3 weeks. The problem was that a lot of people cheated because they wanted to get banned. But they then started to go on to graduated return to play. And the problem was this was all mediated on a certain reliance on the SCAT scan and the HIA were objective. We've always been very concerned about that in progressive rugby, because we do not believe that the brain can recover in 6 days and get them back to play. If you look at the natural history of concussion and the few papers we had, this one comes from Australia. And if you look at the two graphs, the blue line, on the side, the axis going up the side is the percentage of people. So the blue line is the percentage of people not playing. So as the line comes down, you can see that by 6 days, most people were back playing. But if you look at the red line is the recovery of the cognitive thought processes. So you can see that even though they've gone back to play at 6 days, at 6 days, they've still got some cognitive loss. So there is some measurable loss at that time they go back. And that by the time they're at 3 weeks, there's still some 17% change. Now, it's only one paper, but ask any teacher who's had a child what the maths is like at a few weeks, and you find that most children still have a mathematical problem several weeks after the injury. However, what we can say, the majority of people do get better. It's not a major problem for most people, but it does take longer in women and children. We're dealing with 90%, 98% of rugby specifically played in the amateur sports. It's in clubs and schools. And we do have a different return to play in the United Kingdom. It's 19 days for community before they go back, and it's 23 days for for the schools.